Welcome, everybody. Today we're going to talk about lessons learned from teaching through the pandemic. I've outlined some questions that we can discuss, and in the action of answering the questions, some activities just to model the kinds of things that you can do in your class to get more engagement from your students. What I'm using here is just a Google Slides. And I have used the share button to share these slides so that anyone with the link could view. And now I'm making it so anyone with the link can edit. And I'll copy that link and paste it in the chat so that anybody who wants the slides for after the fact can save that link. And if you wanted to jump in there now and put a little tick mark or rearrange these on the screen. This first question was just to sort of demonstrate a list of ways that people can engage in an online class. I've listed some common ones: speaking aloud, just letting people unmute, or using the chat or reactions. I see a few people have been able to get in. Breakout rooms. And if you think those are should be higher on the list in terms of which ones are most effective, please feel free to put in all your options. And if we need more room, I'll make a second column. Which ones have you guys found that the students use the most and like the most? I think those are two different questions, but in your experience, and feel free to just unmute, throw it in the chat, whichever method most suits you.
I definitely had the most engagement through breakout rooms and just talking aloud in conversation. Although I do love Padlet. And
what do you use Padlet for? When is Padlet better for you than just having a discussion? What's the purpose?
Padlet's great for that, for synchronous discussion, because Zoom is so much one person at a time. And it's an option for, in breakout rooms, everybody's in a separate room, and as a facilitator, you can't see everyone working at once. Like you could in a classroom where you're sitting at different table groups, and you can still kind of listen in on all of the conversations, even though you're not participating in, but one at a time. So Padlet or a Jamboard give you the option to kind of listen into all the conversations or the ideas at the same time.
Mm-hmm. So if you do have an activity that you want to monitor all of your breakout rooms at once, if you have a shared Google Sheet that has a section for each breakout room to put notes on, or that has the questions on. In the Student Success Conference, there were 3 questions each group was supposed to answer. And we put them on multiple pages of a Google Sheet, and we let each group assign themselves a color or name their breakout room and start taking notes. And then you can scroll up and down the document. That also allows the other students in the room to scroll up and down the document to see if they're in the right track. That sort of thing. So that's another thing. And do you keep your Padlets for a long time and share them out afterwards, or is it just for in-the-moment communication?
I've used both. I've posted some of them back for students, but then some were just used in class. And candidates could definitely go back to those links later if they wanted to.
Mm-hmm. Does someone want to say more about the Wheel of Names? Oh.
Yes, I can say that. This is Rosa. Do you guys are familiar with the Wheel of Names? Have you seen it? Yeah. Just let me put my camera. Sorry, multitasking this morning. So I use the Wheel of Names to keep students engaged on topics that we're gonna break out in the session. For example, in my film class, we have ways to look at films with looking at the editing or looking at the voiceover or the acting, the dramatic, different elements of film. So what I do is I run the wheel, and the wheel chooses the topic of the question that we're going to ask. The students get very excited with that. So it's good for transitions between activities that might be a little bit more demanding. So that creates like a festive kind of carnival moment to transition into something that is going to be, again, a little more demanding, a little bit more theoretical. So I found that this is a good tool for transitioning.
Okay, excellent. That's one I haven't used before. And I will put a link to it in the chat. Shannon, looks like you're next. No pressure or anything.
Oh, that's great. Actually, simultaneously had a question about that exercise, if it's okay.
Sure.
Can you fill in the name? So you fill in that wheel with the names of the people in your class. Can you also fill it in with different questions? Is that part of what you were saying, or?
It does look like you could, let's see if there's a limit. How long?
Oh, there's a word limit, maybe.
That's what I'm wondering, or if it's just a word wrap or something like that. So let's see what happens. I'm just going to put in some random words.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you put in a return. Okay, so if you put in a hard return, you're going to double return if you need room between your questions. So you could say, what question are we going to answer next? Is that what you're thinking?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, something like that.
It looks like it makes it hard to read, though. Like,
yeah,
you can only fit out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
You could have a master list of questions and just summarize each in a few words.
Right.
For the
So you could
choice.
do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Or just like topic names.
Yep. Yeah.
Or if you click on the results, does it show you the full text of the winner? That's fine. That'll tell us what we need to know.
And then we'll check the third result.
So can I show you a wheel of names, guys, how I use it? Is that what we're talking about? So for example, in my film class, I would use this for analyzing different elements of that film. And then where should we start? For example, I would say the team of Oliver and Mary Beth are gonna focus on, and then I spill the wheel. And then Mary and Oliver are gonna focus on the characters. Apparently the characters, let's see. And when they win, look what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Characters, because you can animate the words of the result. I never animated anything very like big phrase or anything, but just shorter. And then I don't remove here. I just close without removing because I want the wheel to remain intact. For you know, and when I really want to rule out one of the categories, I remove it. But what I do is I discovered this. Let's see what I'm doing.
So the customize button allows you to customize your colors and how long the wheel spins, and whether it removes the item after it's been selected so it doesn't get hit a duplicate time.
Totally. So here is your list of things, and then you can remove it. And what I learned, guys, if you ever use it, just to spare you from the disappointment that I had the first time, I had my perfect wheel, everything there, and I didn't save it right away. Every time you do anything, you don't save it, it is gonna go away, totally away. So what you want is to always save. So I have all my wheels here. I have wheels. For depending on the movie, stuff like that, save, and then I just keep saving them or deleting them.
No, it's good. It's a new tool for the list that we haven't seen before. Or that I haven't seen before. So, you know, I think it's very easy to use the speaking aloud and the chat and the reactions buttons in Zoom. So I bet those get used a lot. And then as we think about these other ones, they do something a little different than just either ask for a reaction or open discussion. So you have your Padlet and Google Jamboard can be really good for brainstorming activities when you have a lot of people that can do the same thing at the same time. Or if you have a think, pair, share, you can ask people, you know, here's the question. I want you to think about it on your own for a minute. And when you have an answer, throw it up on the, or when you have a thought, throw it up on the Padlet or the Jamboard. And then that share part becomes much easier because everybody shares in the same place. So you don't have to cover everything that all 20 people in the class might share, but you can ask, does anybody comfortable speaking out and want to share what they put on the board or ask a question about what someone else put on the board? And everybody gets the benefit of seeing everybody's answer. So you get sort of a more equity, a more equitable classroom situation because it gives people the ability to everyone to participate and get their voice heard without taking up the whole class time for one question. How many of you are familiar with the Annotate tool? You can give me a thumbs up or a reaction or whatever. So when anybody is sharing, right now I'm sharing my screen, at the top, you have a menu item that says you are viewing Bonnie Power's screen, and you have a view menu that has the Annotate option in it. And I want to click on my share. I got to share my screen again. So now you should have that button. And if you click the Annotate toolbar, as the person sharing, I can annotate as well. And as the people watching, as long as I don't have it turned off in my security panel, you all can annotate. And we can ask you to say, grab the stamp tool and pick whichever stamp you want and vote for the ones that you think that you find most interesting and engaging. Like not necessarily the one that you use all the time, but like what's your favorite one? Or it could also be a way that you vote on something. You can have a grid, like I'm a fan of Poll Everywhere, and I tend to use Google Jamboard a lot, or everybody can have their own. You can just use the text tool and you can type your initials next to the one that is, you know, the one that you want to vote on. You can have people throw in a question mark. If they have a question on your slides that you're presenting, say, turn on your Annotate toolbar. If you have a question about something, put the little question mark icon on top of it, and I'll know you have a question about that part of the video. And you, of course, you can clear all the drawings. You can clear your own drawings. You can clear your viewers' drawings. And they don't actually do anything to your underlying document. They're just on a clear layer on top. You can do that. All right. Let's move on to, so we've now practiced the adding on to someone. Here's on our next slide. I have to change back to my mouse. First, I clear all the drawings. When you need to use your mouse again after you've been annotating, you have to change back to your mouse tool to click on the next thing. So feel free to say your answer out loud. You can put your answer in the chat or hop right on to slide number 2. And what is the most impactful thing that you've learned about teaching and learning throughout the pandemic? What do you think's made the most different? Or it doesn't have to be the most, because that's always hard. What's made a difference in your life, a difference in your students' life? Maybe not beating yourself up for being perfect or trying to be perfect.
For me, it was actually realizing that good quality discussions could be had in the larger group. That even though great breakout rooms are very helpful, it's still possible to, and the students appreciated having the larger discussions too.
Someone started, students want quality, small.
Discussions.
Okay. Keeping it simple. So how do you eat an elephant? One small bite at a time. I think we were all thrown into, I don't know, the Grand Canyon of struggle a year ago, March, and it seemed overwhelming. And I think different people came along at different times and realized, okay, I can't all of a sudden be instant perfect online instructor when I've never done it before. I'm going to get the basics and do my best. And then each semester or each half semester, just try one new thing and see how it goes and see if it's valuable. And only when you can really take it on. And some of these examples that we're going to come up with in the next couple of slides are examples of one thing that you can do. Just because we're going to try out a few different things in today's session doesn't mean you need to run out and do them all in your class next week. It's like,
So
go ahead.
This is Rob. So you're speaking to my fears as a brand new professor or brand new teacher, in the sense that I think the way that I work probably in person is much more suited to my personality. So in some ways, you know, also I'm teaching classes that are somewhere upwards of 20 students per Zoom class. And I guess my trepidation is about, you know, how do you manage all the tech, you know, and monitor, you know, 20 some odd students and keeping them engaged. So you're kind of speaking my language now about sort of keeping it pretty simple.
So does anybody want to speak to that in terms of what kind of advice would you give a new faculty member? That's question number 6 or 7 on the slides, but since it came up right now, I think it's
Hi, I'm an instructional designer, but I also teach. And I teach classes of that size. And I think for me, the trick is not thinking about the differences, but thinking about what's the same. So when you're teaching a Zoom class, yes, there are differences, but also it can feel like a face-to-face class in certain ways. And immediately fostering those similarities and also having a discussion with your students about why we're doing this and how that looks different really helped me. So for example, I talked to my students and I said, let's all together come up with a classroom community and let's you guys decide how you want to indicate that someone's going to speak or what the rules of the Zoom room are. Because that lets me be me still and run my class how I want to, but it also shows them that I care and that they're involved.
Plus, there's a little bit of buy-in with that kind of co-creation strategy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it reminds them that we're in it together. Like they don't want to be learning this way. I don't necessarily want to be teaching this way. So together we can make the best of it.
Do you have students who are first-year students, or have they been doing this for a couple of semesters in your classes? Robert? Yeah, sorry.
Sorry. I am teaching group theory, which tends to be sort of at the beginning, but I don't actually know. There's like lots of different cohorts coming together for that class. So I don't actually know where it falls within the overall curriculum. So
I think you have the opportunity also to get feedback from students. Their start, stop, continue is an activity for just getting feedback at the end or even in the middle of each class that says, what should I start doing? What has worked well in some of your other courses like this? What do you like doing? What helps keep you engaged? A stop maybe, what's something I should do differently? You know, and maybe, you know, you don't ask them right away, but at the end of class, you can just say, yeah, before you leave, would you drop a start, stop, or continue in the chat? Then you can save the chat and get a little feedback. And continue would be, what's something that we did well today, that worked out well today, that you'd like us to continue doing in our class. Also, Abby, I think she implied this. She's an instructional designer available to all of our campus faculty. So if you wanted to talk about some methodologies for your class, certainly email Abby or just at@antioch.edu, and we can get you connected with Abby in advance. And if you need help setting up your Sakai site with the technical stuff or the training things, I can help. Or if you're already working with Abby, she can help you with that as well. So I think we tried to talk about self-care. I think we forgot about it for the first 3 or 6 months of the pandemic, and then it became really super necessary. And I think it often gets left to the end in some of these presentations. So I wanted to really focus on that today for people who have been doing this for a little while. What do you do for self-care, and do you push it off to the absolute end of the day? Are you able to squeeze it in the middle of the day when you really need it? What works for you? I'm going to put the Jamboard link, sorry about that, in the chat so you can just click it. But if you're in the presentation, that's it. And when you go to the Google Jamboard, for anybody who hasn't used it, I was mentioning Jamboard is similar to Padlet. I think the free version of Padlet, it's a little prettier. It's got some backgrounds and things like that. It only allows you to have 5 Padlets, but it has some nice features. Jamboard, you can have an unlimited number because we all have Google accounts. And students don't have to sign into a Padlet, do they, Carolyn? They don't need a new account. They can just join yours.
Correct.
Yeah. So I really like it when students don't have to sign into a tool in addition or create an account whenever possible. But the tools that have really powerful features, sometimes that's worth it to overcome it. So if you haven't used Jamboard before, sometimes I stick a little directional note up here in the corner that give people introductory instructions about how to get started. You know, sometimes we think, oh, our students are, you know, much more technical than we are. They probably have used this in 5 other classes, but that may be true of some of your students, and it may not be true of all of them. They just might not have used this tool before. So if you can provide any sort of instruction, like where to find the sticky note to add a new one, change the color.
One experience I have with the Jamboard is that you need to give the access to that, share the Jamboard beforehand if you want them to participate. In the case of my students, if I don't give them access the way Bonnie gave us all, you cannot go there and participate. And then in the middle of the class downtime can be very frustrating for students when you are online.
Yeah, so if you can share it in advance.
Yes.
And what I tend to do if I have to do something quickly is use these down here, allow anyone on the internet with the link, and then all I have to do is drop the link in. And after class, if you want to stop the editing, you can come back in and change this back to just viewing, or you can just add your students individually up here, but this takes a while. So if you need something quick, go to the bottom and just change this, open it wide up for the class period time because you're in a hurry, and then come down here and close it when you're done so that you don't have to You don't have to worry about it later. I mean, the thing is if you already know Padlet, don't just learn Google Jamboard just to learn Google Jamboard if you're stressed out. You know, if you've got to pick one tool, maybe ask your people in your program. Consistency is really important for students. If your Sakai courses are organized the same throughout your program, your Zoom links in on the overview page, you have lessons pages, you have your assignments and things like that. Students can flow from course to course much easier. The same's true for the tools you might use. If there are a number of people in your department who use Jamboard and you haven't picked up a tool yet, maybe that's the one you adopt because you can get help from your colleagues. Your students are probably already using it, and it has similar features to some of the other options. Same thing with a polling tool. Zoom has a polling tool. You can only do multiple choice options, and there's no real easy way to do other. You can let them select other, but the only thing they can do is type that in the chat. So if you want a polling option like Poll Everywhere, which I'll show you in a minute, or Mentimeter, if your colleagues in your department are already using Poll Everywhere, or they're already using something else, then that's a good way to have a group of people using the same thing, so students don't have to learn. I see someone has used the pencil, someone's dropped in an image, and you can see you can sort of upvote people's ideas by attaching your sticky note or even using the pen tool, or I like the arrow tool. You can either group some things together, or you can, connect this one to this one with an arrow or something like that. Oh, take a day away from email. Choosing things that I don't sacrifice. Meditation through puzzles. Focus on interior decorating. Dog walks. Yeah, that's a twofer. That's like something already on my to-do list that also gives me a little de-stress break. So, and what I love about Jamboard is you can ask everybody, okay, now let's everybody pick up and move your Post-it notes. We can make columns. So if we were talking about things that were more health and exercise driven versus fun distractions, we could make 3 columns and you can say, everybody pick up and move your sticky note. And once I don't need the sticky note anymore, I can just delete it and clear the board to make more room. Or we could say, everybody change your own sticky note to the right color. And then these are the colors for the groups we're going to create. So this is where the sorting comes in. It doesn't take long. If you had to do all of this typing and talking and speaking it out loud, it could take a lot longer than if you can just allow everyone to type on the Jamboard at the same time and then go into a sorting activity where everybody changes the color or aligns their sticky notes into different columns. And not only that, you've shared this, then come back and have the content anytime. People aren't scribbling things down, worried that they're missing something, or things like that. Does anybody want to share one of their tips out loud before I bounce off to another question? All right. If you had a new instructor in your department, we started to answer some of this, but let's record some real answers. Here's the link. Poll Everywhere is a polling tool. Only the instructor needs to have an account. All the students need is to click that link on their phone. And what I'm going to do is show you my instructor view. You can also do this on your mobile device so that you don't have to lose your Zoom screen if you only have one screen. You can just pick up your phone. I think there's an app you can download, or you can just open up any browser and type in that very short URL up here at the top. Let's see. Okay, it deactivated itself. So it should be active now. And this also allows me as the instructor to participate. If I'm using a different device, I can just contribute to the to what can be added. This is one thing I wish Jamboard did, that they had a very short Jamboard link instead of that very, very long one.
You can always use Bitly to condense those links.
Yes. This gives people who might not be willing to like speak up, or let's just say you have a noisy background and don't want to unmute, they have an opportunity to participate. Sometimes when you speak things out loud, unless you're recording and sharing the recording with your students for every class, having the output recorded for you makes it really valuable to go back to. Creating a recorded lecture has so many advantages. You can really trim it down to, a less than 10-minute lecture. But what students can't do is watch it over and over and over again if they just see you doing your lecture in class. The same thing is true with the results of the polls or the results of the brainstorms or the things that other people share in class. If there isn't a document saved that records some of those important conversations, you have to rely on your memory. And I think right now, people's memories are really strained by distraction and emotion and all that's going on in their lives. And having any sort of documented class material really helps people be able to go back and see what maybe they missed in the moment or forgot about from a week ago. So I'm just going to scroll down. In advance of the record, write a narrative evaluation along with the syllabus. It's easier to abandon the plan than create one on the fly. And I won't promote that Poll Everywhere is the best tool or the only polling tool. Mentimeter is a great tool because it allows you to do a slide presentation and embed your activities right in it. But you can only have 2 activities in a presentation. Poll Everywhere has no presentation tool. It just has the activities, but there's a wide variety of question types. And you can have up to 40 responses. So that means your class can be up to 40 people. And you can prepare them all ahead of time and go next through just the activities, but not embedded. So just for your usage, you might decide which tool is better for you. All right. So these are some really, really great. Set boundaries on the time that you work. Katie, are you talking to me? You'll also notice that these are anonymous. People can put their name in on some question types if you're trying to collect who said what. But if you're collecting some of these more anonymous question types, this one could be good.
So Bonnie,
Mm-hmm.
do you find that, you've mentioned this a couple of times, and I know that I've had this experience when I was a student, not me personally, because I have a big New York mouth, but other people. Do you find that students tend to want an option that doesn't actually require speaking in the Zoom?
I see Stephen nodding his head, who don't speak up. Do other faculty want to speak to their experience with that?
Yeah, I've found that there's always one or a few students who are really actively engaged, but they don't enjoy speaking in the larger group, sometimes in a smaller breakout group. But I want to create multiple ways that they can contribute. Of course, the chat is immediate kind of way, but Also, to create little ways that they can present, things that are important to them during the course time. So I've worked on that with the particular students, and of course gotten their consent, to invite them to be involved whenever they feel ready.
Robert, what do you teach? What's your subject?
Group theory.
Okay. Sometimes I teach women's studies to undergrads. So sometimes my students personally are afraid that they'll be offensive. So I like the anonymity of Poll Everywhere because they can say something without having their name attached to it, because other students might have the same sort of question about a topic, but they don't have to feel like their peers are going to judge them for getting something wrong or something like that as well.
And just proof of the pudding. Can I ask you speaking right now? Because I actually don't see anybody.
Oh, it's Abby. Sorry, Abby Johnson.
No worries. Thanks, Abby. Yeah, no, I think I have a sort of a weird thing in my brain about the difference between participating and non-participation, right? Like there's always really great opportunities to have discussions, but like, to your point about anonymity and whether or not there could be potential conflict, I don't know that students would have that same luxury in an in-person setting. So I'm also trying to struggle with a completely different modality and how to best serve the topic and of course people, because I sat next to one of my close friends during my master's, my counseling master's, and I don't think she contributed voluntarily once in 3 years. And she's one of the brightest, most lovely people that I know. And I hate dead space, and I'm a very interactive person. So I'm always going to open my mouth and start the ball rolling because it's very comfortable for me. So there's that balance that I'm trying to strike now that I'm on the other side and trying to understand how those dynamics would work well, in a Zoom world where things are very different.
No, for sure. And to your point about a face-to-face course, I went to a big state school. So we used Poll Everywhere in face-to-face classes anyway, just because there was like 300 of us in certain courses. And so I think that some of these tools don't have to go away, especially like to your point, about your friend, like she's absorbing things. She might have things to say, but there's an anxiety or a shyness or whatever that's preventing her from speaking up. So a tool like this stays useful, in my opinion.
Right. But just again, sorry to be more here. But I think in group, like the whole point of being a facilitator or a leader is really having to put yourself in that uncomfortable position. So there's a little bit of that's also being factored into my brain as you speak. But thank you so much for your input. It's incredibly valuable to me.
I'd like to say something from Writing Center theory and practice and thinking about the virtual space. And you specifically mentioned dead space, Rob, that dead space for an instructor or a tutor is often thinking space for a student. And so it can feel really uncomfortable for the person with the knowledge who knows where they're trying to go to have the people who are not quite there sort of processing their way through it. It seems like they're just confused and not doing anything, but actually they're really working hard internally to get to the place you want them to get to. It's really important to give them that space and not necessarily jump to the next thing, because when we know where we're going, it's much easier for us to get there and it feels super slow. So this is something we teach all of our in-person tutors. It's like, don't fill the space. Let them set the pace of a session. Let them set the pace of learning, because otherwise you're going to push them beyond what they can keep up with. It's not true for everybody, but like in a lot of
thank you for that. I think for me, again, the concern is I can't track that the same way over Zoom that I would in an actual room. So I appreciate that. I appreciate those thoughts. Thank you so much.
Maybe thinking about how you are evaluating the comprehension of students in the online classes is something that is really different than you would in person, because you are not getting the same cues Although I would say too that if you don't have ways of measuring whether or not somebody is comprehending and able to reflect the learning for those quiet people, then you're also probably going to be particularly challenged in online, because you still have to be able to, if somebody doesn't speak, you have to know how they know the stuff still. But I think you have the added challenge in an online class that it's even difficult sometimes for the people who jump in and talk to gauge it quite as effectively, because you don't have the same overall physical cues that you would that really do add something in a classroom to gauging people's interest, engagement, and understanding. But it's not impossible.
But Katie, how do you do that? Especially like if you've got like 30 people and you can't even see all the thumbnails on, and I have a pretty big monitor, right?
Yep.
So if they're not participating and you have no visual cues and you can't even see the thumbnails on the screen, how do you gauge whether the quieter or more shy or introverted students are actually, if they're great, especially if they're great, participation is part of that, right?
Yeah. Well, I think so. You need to figure out ways so that everybody can do it. So some of these other tools for just the participation, but I think, participation is showing up and being there to some students at, a minimal level. If you have very explicit guidelines around what the expectations are for participating beyond that, then I think that's really important. If they don't say anything, that doesn't count, you need to tell them that up front. But I think more importantly, you need to make sure that whatever you're having them do, that you are actually assessing and giving them formative feedback on, or summative feedback throughout the course, really, really needs to get very explicitly toward the learning objectives you have, and pretty much nothing else. If it's not just finding out if they know what you want them to know, then you need to revisit it and make sure that it's really focused on that, so that you can tell and have more smaller things along the way too, so that you don't find out week 7 that they didn't get anything from week 2 to 4. You need to know that back then, so that you can actually adapt what you're doing in class to address gaps in either in individuals, but also collectively as a class. If they're sort of falling a little bit behind, you need to have a lot of regular check-ins with them. To make sure. But that's building something that's outside of that daily or that weekly discussion time, to make sure that you have check-ins that capture everybody. So again, back to the planning and really thinking through the whole picture, with the discussions as a piece of that, but it can't be the whole thing. Yeah.
And I would say too, when you're thinking about participation, and this goes back to planning, thinking backwards. So why is it participation? Is it participation because that's how you were taught and that's what you're used to? Is it participation because you need to know they did the reading? Is it participation because you're doing like a role play or something like that and they need to get this practice? And then whatever that purpose is, how else could they demonstrate it? So if it's the reading, can they come with a question? What don't they understand? And then that might be more comfortable than a blank stare because they didn't get the reading, and they're waiting for you to fill that space by explaining it to them. I always try to give them like different ways to participate. And you could also, I had a really terrifying teacher in grad school who, if she would ask a question, someone got it wrong, she would then call on someone else and make the first person reiterate. So kind of like forcing participation by like bouncing among the class and kind of building that community in that way and showing that you can't hide. It's a terrifying way to do it, but it is another way for sure, especially in the online environment.
And if you're trying to evaluate whether they will be an effective group leader, then maybe that is something that you might not demonstrate in the moment when you have read something new, you're digesting it and synthesizing it and trying to give it back. If you are going to be an effective group leader, theoretically, you are planning that in advance and you are setting up what you're going to do in your group. So if they can model that with the ability to plan, come to class, lead a group as a fishbowl, experience, they can demonstrate their ability to prepare and lead a group if that's the learning objective. And perhaps participating in class in the moment without that time to prepare and plan is what's hanging them up. And if they did have that. So maybe there are some questions that they have their guided reading questions that they need to be prepared to answer when they come to class versus showing them the questions after read this assignment or whatever, then come and let's discuss, oh, here are the questions right now. They need that time to think. That's why the think, pair, share, that think part I think is the most important, and often what gets skipped most is giving people some time to get their thoughts together so that they don't have to speak off the cuff uncomfortably.
And what about the idea of monitoring breakout rooms? Is that also, that's a possibility, right? Like if you create breakout rooms as the facilitator, you can sort of jump into each of the groups intermittently, right? And just sort of either observe or participate, right?
You can, but they know you're there. And
well,
I don't
yeah,
know.
That's fine. I wouldn't want to ambush them, but
Right.
if each week you sort of plan to monitor, one or two groups, then you're at least there to observe and be available for questions, or you can see things, a little bit differently than in a gigantic group where people might feel a bit more trepidatious,
Mm-hmm.
One thing with that, just to note, if you're doing it too, is if you do have people who are communicating through the chat as an add-on to the verbal discussion, then you don't see the messages that were entered before you enter the room. So just like you don't hear the voices before you enter the room, you don't see the messages. So you actually start, right at the same point. Yeah. In both respects.
And faculty have told me that when they drop in unexpectedly, even planned, that it sometimes stifles and stops the conversation for a minute. So it might be that you let people know that you're going to start in group one and you stay with group one that day for a while, rather than jumping in the middle. Or so if you start a second breakout room, maybe the next time you go into group two, but you start it with them. So you're there, but not the leader of the group, just, as an observer of the group. Because it's very hard. Or you might say, use the broadcast message tool to say, I'll be joining group two in 1 minute or something like that, because they will pause, but you want to hear what they're saying. And I know that often happens. The next person comes in and it changes back to, oh, hey, how are you guys doing? What are you doing? It's not the conversation because you can't just listen in.
I'd also like to make a suggestion on the collaborative group management side. If you have 30 people, maybe consider polling them in the first class about what class participation looks like for them as individuals, and then sharing the results with the class so that they have a sense of how many people in the class are really engaged and going to jump in whenever they have a chance, how many people are going to think slower and be more quiet. And then you also will have a sense as an instructor of like, oh, well, 50% of my class said they need more space in order to jump into something, and 50% of my class aren't jumping into something, so that tracks. But if it gets to like 75% aren't jumping in, but only 50% said that, it also leaves you the opportunity to, in later classes, potentially as a group to say, like, I'm going to ask a question, I'd like the quieter people to answer this. If you identified yourself as somebody who has trouble jumping into class, everybody make some space and let's let these people into it. And that can give you a better sense of who's in your room, and not necessarily individually, but what kind of dynamics you might be working with.
Yeah, and I just noted a book in the chat. It's called Small Teaching Online by Flower Darby. So James Lang originally wrote a book called Small Teaching. It's about 9 small teaching practices that you could implement into your course, in the next week. Retrieval practice, connecting, he's got 9 names for them. Flower Darby, he worked with Flower Darby to write the Small Teaching Online book, which has some of those 9 and some spin-offs on those to help with that. And we're going to be doing a book group later in the year on small teaching, followed by Small Teaching Online. But if you're the kind of person who wants to read what other educators are doing, it's a super approachable book, and it's based on research. All right, so we've got 4 minutes. And I mentioned in the email I sent, and if anybody didn't get it, let me know. There was one more activity that I didn't really expect us to do while we're in Zoom, because Flipgrid is not an activity that you can do easily while you're also on a video call. So I've created a Flipgrid assignment, and Flipgrid is a tool that allows you to ask a question, video, and it has text-based, and it allows your students to record their response to that question. So it's great for introductions in the beginning of class. If you don't want to spend your whole first class introducing everybody, you could say, set up an introductory video to introduce yourself and let all of your students record their response asynchronously, and then they can go back and re-listen to them. And you might ask some guiding questions. So for example, in my account for the anti-racism task force, there's 25 of us. It would have taken us, a long time to introduce ourselves. And so they gave us 2 minutes, and they asked us to answer, what have you been involved in at Antioch University or elsewhere that will likely inform your expectations or your work on the committee? What will task force success in year 1 look like to you? And then each person just came in here and they clicked add a response, and you can just watch all these little short videos. And I say short because I think the best use of Flipgrid is when people are doing really short, succinct videos that get to the point. So if you're bored with discussion forums for 1 week and you're using them in Sakai, or you're not getting what you want out of them, a little quick and easy Flipgrid assignment might work. And it's pretty simple. People just come in here, you click record a response. You have the opportunity to throw away that recording and re-record yourself. You can upload an avatar, and I believe you can do an audio recording only. So it's pretty straightforward. I won't walk through the whole setup with you, but if you wanted to try it, anybody wanted to try it, just email AT. Can help you set up your first Flipgrid. And Greg Whiteman actually at another campus uses it. Rosa.
When the ones that want to be, to the point of Robert was making Ace earlier, is those that want to be anonymous, or can they do this in their video? or something? Is there any way for them to remain anonymous?
Yes, but if you're grading it as a part of a discussion forum, then that's probably not ideal. We could look into that if we tried to set one up. The one thing in here that I had trouble with is you have to list all of your students. You have to make them part of a group to have access to your topics in here. What I did is I added a guest password, but I thought that would allow people to join as a guest with just the password. But as many of you found out, that didn't work. I had to manually add each of your individual email addresses for you to be able to do it. So this would be less for an anonymous post, but it is held to only the group, only the people in your class. Abby, does VoiceThread have anonymous responses?
Yes, but it's a setting somewhere that I would have to root for. Yes. And it would depend how you set it up, because again, if it's graded, it's going to tell you who submitted and who didn't. Well, right. There's different ways to set it up as being graded, but the main one, it will tell you who didn't submit yet. But I'm pretty sure there's an anonymous feature.
Okay, and I was just a tester for a new tool that's coming to Sakai. It's a new version of the discussion forums product, which allows for several new features. That is, you can post anonymously, and you can post to the instructor only or to the whole group. So that option may be coming to Sakai, not in the immediate future, but down the road a little bit, because that's one of the things people have been asking for, is the ability to submit anonymously. All right, it's 2:31, and I'm going to leave this lessons learned from teaching through the pandemic. If you would like to come in here and click these links, add anything to the bullets, make new slides so that your suggestion can be in here, please do that. I will go to the poll everywhere, and I will put what people posted on the slide that was for poll everywhere so that you guys continue to look at the responses that everyone gave. I think we have tons to learn from our colleagues, from faculty who are teaching 4 classes a semester, or even 1 class a semester. Those lessons that you guys bring to us, about what your experience has been over the last year are really valuable to be sharing with your colleagues. So please feel free to come in here and add this on, and I'll link to it when I share the video so that people who just watch the video later can also come in here and see what you've added to the discussion, which has been really valuable. So I appreciate all your time, and feel free to email us at at@antioch.edu